So this morning, we're going to talk about something I think that's super important for us doing operations, especially, and that is managing third-party vendors, specifically finding experts in your space. And the thing I'd like to really lean into this morning is imposter syndrome, because I feel like I find it all the time with operations-based people. The Collab team has the benefit of being underneath the hood for a lot of different kinds of businesses and a lot of really good-sized businesses. And you would think that the small businesses, maybe they deal with this more, but it's actually the bigger businesses I found that deal with it even more than that. And that is, I shouldn't be in this position. How did I get in this position? I don't know enough to be in this position. I'm a total imposter, right? Like there's that feeling of I should know more. I should be able to do more. The company's looking to me to be more. My boss expects more from me than I can possibly give. And a lot of times those pressures are your own internal pressures. If you'll ask yourself a lot of times, has anybody necessarily ever directly said that to you? Or is that just something that you're carrying yourself? 99% of the time, that's just something you're carrying yourself. That's something that you, as the director of operations or the COO or somebody running operations, maybe your title hasn't even been that formalized yet. It's easy to think that you should know more than you do. And then that contributes to you feeling like an imposter instead of realizing, no, somebody has seated you in this seat probably because you're responsible, because you hold the space well, because you're going to dog down the answers and you're not going to stop until you get there. And because you're going to make sure other people don't quit either, right? Because all of those things are probably things that visionaries just aren't that great at, right? They don't like the details. They don't want to be bogged down, right? They're definitely going to lose track of it because they have shiny object syndrome and they're going to chase after whatever the new exciting thing is. Like guaranteed, probably before we get off this call, they've had 5 new ideas that they want to chase down. So they're not going to stick with ideas, and they're the worst at holding people accountable, but the best at getting pissed when things don't happen, right? So it's like, they're not going to be the best one to be the one that holds the cards. So you probably escalated within your organization if you're on this call or if you're watching this later, because you're the responsible one, right? You're the one that actually gets shiz done. You're the one that shows up with ideas to plot things out. You're the one that holds people accountable to things that have been assigned to them. And that's how you've got to this position. And I think that that's the most important thing about your role. Experienced is only gained by knowledge. And if you've never been in scenarios before, how could you have a knowledge base in that? But the beauty is you're smart enough to realize that if you can just hold the space and then reach out to experts, like that's how you actually glean and gain knowledge base for all of us, right? I think that all of us have only learned the things that we've learned probably either because you were schooled in them, but where do you get schooling on the kinds of things a lot of us have to deal with, right? Or because you've been thrown into the deep end of the pool and had to swim your way out. And then from that swimming, you came up with systems while you're there. And then that system has become the staple when you're like, holy cow, that's the staple. I totally created that on the fly because I was stressed about what I had just gotten thrown under. But because you're so much more organized and your brain works systematically through things, that actually becomes a template that can be refined and refined and refined and bettered over time. And I think the key is you are always going to have a role even when you reach out to experts, because you're more of an expert than you realize. And you're an expert for your business, right? So if we go out, we're going to talk about a couple of different kinds of experts that you can reach out to on the external and bring into the business that's going to help you grow your business. But really, those experts can only take things so far if they don't have a data source, right? Like they don't know your business. They're just good at whatever you're hiring them to be specialized in. You're the expert in your business, and you need to bring them back data so that they can build out whatever it is that they build out. But man, you're the expert of your business, and therefore you're going to contribute to their expertise. You're going to glean things, you're going to learn from them, and then you're going to make it better in the end. Taryn Turner, what do you think of all of that today? Taryn's like, oh man, I wasn't paying attention. What did you just say?
No, I think experts are great. It's the reason, we all exist. And it's like describing your micro niche or whatever. Sometimes you do need to hire somebody that can help out and in ways that you can't, or maybe you're not best suited for. Maybe your time's best spent somewhere else. The time versus money problem. Yeah, you might be able to do it. It might take you 20 hours, or you might be able to pay somebody to do it for you.
I think no matter what it is, right? Especially in the online entrepreneur space, everything is always changing. So how could you possibly know everything? Even if you knew everything, let's say you knew everything that was to be known today. Well, I hope you enjoy it because you just got retired. I mean, like by the end of today, something new's coming out in your space. And how could you possibly know it all? But the beauty is if you can find, like Taryn was saying, somebody who's micro niche down in a specific area, why wouldn't you glean from them? And why wouldn't you be willing to pay them to learn the best technique in that area, realizing it's probably not going to be forever, but let's let them hold that space for now to teach you. And I think realistically, your role in that spot becomes you hold the space, which means you own the rock, right? Like we all have been doing L10s. So if this next big endeavor you're doing, if that's building your sales team, if that's building out finance process, if that's building out an affiliate management base, if that's maybe bots, we're going to talk about those four specifically today. There are a lot of spaces that can be held like this, but those are four micro niches that people can be brought in as experts in, that we've actually ushered people into businesses and held their hand through it and then exited them from the business, and the businesses end up better for it. We need somebody to hold the rock, right? The expert can't hold the rock because they're doing that for 10 other businesses just like yours. And if somebody on your team isn't holding the rock, and obviously I'm using EOS language very strongly here. I am speaking about specifically rocks on your L10 meeting. If somebody doesn't hold that rock, guess what? It slips. And then experts, consultants are notorious for giving you as much attention as you require them to give you. So that means if you take your eye off the ball, if you don't hold them accountable, they're going to allow as much slack in that line as you let in the line. When you're fly fishing, the key is like you're casting your line out, casting your line out, casting your line out. And then as you're stripping it back in, you hold tension on the line as you do, because it's floating. And then as you get a fish on, you really hold tension on the line, because the fish can spit the hook if you don't, right? And typically fly fishing, you're fishing without a barbless hook. So all that's holding them on that hook is your tension on the line. And a lot of times it's like that with consultants, right? Like if you're not holding tension on the line, they're going to allow as much slack as you let in the line, and then they're off the hook, and then you got to chase them back down just to figure out where they're at. So your rock is like consistent meeting cadence, deliverables that come out of those meetings, like the ability to say to the visionary when he says, hey, what's going on with the bot lady? You can be like, oh, let me tell you, I just met with her. Here's the 3 things she's working on right now. The next deliverable date is this. And then oftentimes that's all the visionary wants to know. They don't want to even know what the deliverables are. They don't want to get that deep in it. They want to know that you know what it is. You know what I mean? And it's that meeting, holding the meeting cadence, holding the deliverables, and then gaining knowledge as you're seeing what their process is. Then you begin to build it out pretty custom to you. And then realizing that you're going to play a part in whatever that process is. That's what makes you valuable in the seat that you're seated in, because look around the field. Who else is going to do it? Probably no one else. Probably you are the person in your organization that's going to do it. So take a deep breath, shake off imposter syndrome, and realize everybody struggles with it at some point, no matter how high up. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago when I went to War Room earlier this year, and the COO of Kajabi stood up and spoke in the front. Guess what he was talking about? Feeling like an imposter. Why? Well, he had grown this multi-million-dollar, I think it's $1 billion business now. Why would he feel like an imposter? Because they were selling, or they were thinking about selling, and he had never been in that pool before. So how is he supposed to know what you're supposed to do? All of us come into new obstacles. We're always going to be new at something. It's that you're one of the, own this. It's going to be hard for you. Some of you are humbly built. You're probably one of the smartest people in the room. And that doesn't mean that you should strut around like I'm one of the smartest people in the room. It just means you're good at holding details. That's one of your expertises. That's one of your superpowers. And that's what makes you really good at managing third-party vendors and finding experts in your space. Savannah, what do you have thoughts on? I know you said something up high that I thought was fun. Man, I feel like this session is for me. Come on, talk to me about that a little bit.
I struggle with imposter syndrome hard constantly. And the thing that I'm trying to battle with about it is that I don't have formal education in business or operations or anything at all. It's literally I just keep getting put in positions where that ends up like somehow it just falls into my lap, and then
you're a badass, but keep going. Go ahead. It's not a big deal. I just want to make that clear.
And it turns out that I love working with systems. I like working with new software, and I love developing processes. And so I think it's important to know for yourself, and then also to know when you're choosing experts to task things out to, when you're hiring new people, that higher education doesn't necessarily mean the same that it used to. They're going to learn, some good skills. So it's not anything to like throw aside. But if someone doesn't have a degree in something, that doesn't mean that they're not an expert on it. Because if you look at their experience, like I don't have formal education, but I've been working in business management positions for over 10 years now. And so that experience doing lots of different systems, it ends up, you just build up almost kind of a more useful knowledge base because you have real use cases, and you just know what works because you've had to try it. So yeah, I still deal with imposter syndrome pretty much every day. But I feel like I'm getting better when I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, you have experience to back it up. You don't have the shiny degree, but that doesn't mean anything. So
I think formal education, that's probably take some air out of the room as well. Like, formal education is awesome, especially if you need it for something technical. My wife is a nurse. She had to get formal education if you want to be a nurse, right? Like, if you want to be an attorney, you need formalized education, right? If you want to be a doctor, if you want, or some very specific technical trade, a dental technician or somebody, like, you need formalized schooling. I don't want somebody working on my mouth that hasn't been formally trained. You know what I mean?
That's Wyoming stuff right there.
Don't go to Star Valley Hospital. Anyway, but like, I would say this is, where are you going to get formal training on the things that Savannah deals with in the day-to-day? You're not. Like, that doesn't happen. Why? Because it's ever evolving, it's ever changing. But when we can roll in, and I wanted you guys to know, every client that I win, and I feel like we've won some pretty big clients, nobody ever asks what the formal training is of the people on my team. They want to know, who have I done this for? They want to know what our success rate has been. They want to get referrals from people that have seen me do it. That, if I said to them, I have this degree, I have this master's, I've had this, like, that's cool, but I guarantee you didn't learn any of the things that you need to know for what I deal with in your classes. So like, in our space, especially online entrepreneurship, like, this is relatively the Wild West. It's still pretty new. And so everything's always changing. What they need to know is, are you smart enough to problem solve this? And are you going to dog things down until you have a solid answer? And are you not going to make excuses when things don't turn out right? Taryn, would you mind telling the whole class here what you were doing right before you started working with Collab Team, not Roasters, directly after that?
My other job at the bread peddler.
Yes, that's the one. Tell them about it.
Oh yeah, I worked at the bread peddler, sweet little French cafe, just putting pastries on plates, putting bread in bags, making coffees, serving in the bistro. I got bored doing that, so I switched to the dish pit as a dishwasher because I wanted to get experience in the kitchen, and you got to start from the bottom. So I washed dishes for 3 months, then I worked my way up to the cold line, started making food, and just because I wanted better kitchen skills in my own personal life. So I was doing that, but I was doing all that because, as I was becoming the expert in this space, it started small. It was like 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week. So I needed to keep a job with other hours in order while that was increasing.
No, that's awesome. And but the reason I wanted you to qualify that was, and I love that, there's nothing wrong with that kind of a job. It's just, you've all experienced the brilliance of Taryn Turner. I get so much high praise when Taryn Turner rolls into a room and owns something for one of our clients. But if Taryn were to tell you that before this job, he was working at the bread peddler, serving pastries in bags, you would think to yourself, what qualifications does Taryn Turner have to do any of the things that you're bringing into the room, until you experience Taryn Turner and realize that dude is smart. That guy knows what he's talking about. But that's all been gleaned and gained by expertise. I threw Taryn way into the deep end of pool, like right out of the gates. But it was because I had spent enough time with Taryn Turner when he was running stores for Roasters to know this guy's got the brain that is going to know how these things work, and he's going to do awesome in the space. Same thing with Ben, right? Ben came out of brick and mortar, doing a lot of operations-based things, but not a whole lot of things that directly translate into what we do now for online entrepreneurship. But I saw Ben's brain, and I knew he was responsible. He would own things. He would make sure he dogged down answers, and he wouldn't give me excuses when he showed up. Like that. that's who I'm going to put in that seat every time over somebody that's been formally trained and then comes in and thinks that they understand, because then they get stuck in their boxes instead of, no, it's okay. Like, come into the room, realize you probably are going to be new at this. That's fine. Let's test you out and make sure you feel like this can be a good fit for you. And then let's roll. And then for the collab team, fall back into your team for good tips, fall back into your team for a resource, realize you're not the end all be all. So I think, especially for our clients, I know Daryl's experienced some of that with Ben, and even Steven, as Steven's a great example as well. He's in majority in coffee, but he's worked a lot in Square. I know he has the mind for it and he can grow. And I think that recognizing it's who you are that puts you in the seat that you're in, rather than what you know that got you there. So Savannah, thank you for being so transparent about imposter syndrome. I think all of us struggle with that, but I think it's important to acknowledge too, everybody that works with Savannah is like, Savannah's a badass. Like, I've never been challenged on Savannah's badassery. And in fact, Kimberly, I'm going to put you on the spot. So when I introduced Savannah to help with some things, and then we were talking about, you and I, Kimberly, were talking about something from the graphic art side of things. And I told you, hey, well, fall back into Savannah on the interim. She's probably one of the most gifted artists that I've ever worked with personally and known. You said, what can Savannah not do? Like, where do you find these people? And I think that, Savannah, it's good for you to know, like, that's how people feel about you. So Daryl, you want to speak to the power of Ben and Steven in working with you, and just like how you feel like they've been complementing your skill set, your strengths?
Well, first off, I'd like to give no credit to Aaron. For anything that's happening.
Only because I'm going to call him that, and I'm going to say, I'm not going to do that workout next time. Remember what I did for you?
But no, I was telling Aaron yesterday, it was kind of funny because like my bank accounts are larger right now, and I was trying to figure out why, and then it hit me. I'm paying attention to things as far as billing goes that were skipping my attention, but because Ben has me checking, okay, so how are memberships going? Who's coming in from what avenue, whether it be walk-in, social media, different platforms, and we're trying to figure out what's making us the most revenue, and then find the ones that aren't and figure out why they're not making us more. So like that kind of deal. So it's drawn more attention to my my students and my clients. The funny thing is, moving over to the new program that Ben and Steven checked out for me also allowed me more clarity of what was going on with each one of my clients. Mm-hmm. And I crack up about it because I don't know, Savannah, it's that whole thing that you were saying about imposter syndrome. I'm like, well, shit, just let Steven and Ben just run my damn company, because it's doing better because of them, not me, kind of a deal, because I'm like, because they know more than I do, but.
You're the secret sauce. You're the expert, and you hire the other experts, and then it all comes together and it makes magic.
Right. But then you think about the fact that we could have gotten here so much faster had I not known this program, because Steven put all this work into building these widgets for Square through Square. And now we're literally leaving Square to go to a whole nother system that encompasses all of the aspects of my business in one area. So it's easier to even manage. And then I'm just like, well, I should have already known this, so when you were saying that, I'm like, literally, it's like those things that Aaron just like, it's annoying.
I know, I love it. I just want to go on record saying I love being your annoying, like that. I'll take that title and I'll own that every single day. I think it's but I will say, like, it's Daryl, and you're a perfect example of it. It's about reps, right? Like, that's your whole jam, right? You had me doing kicks, the stupidest kicks yesterday, but like, the reality is, if I do 50 kicks like this in a row, it's reps that's going to enable me to one day be able to kick people taller than third graders. You know what I mean? That eventually I'll be able to get my kicks higher, in the martial arts that you're teaching. I think that's how it works, right? It's reps, and it's going through things. So all of the energy we put into Square, because that was the platform you were on, actually directly translates into what were we trying to accomplish in this new platform that actually is more built around, what's it called? Martialetics or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, where it's like, it's specifically designed for martial arts studios. That's so niche and it's so beautiful, but we just did our reps over here in Square so that we know what we're looking for in martialetics, and we can make sure it comes, works out. And I think knowledge is progressive, right? Like that's that's how we glean. It's reps we've done probably on other platforms that help us recognize, oh my gosh, that next platform is so much better because I've been doing so much manual work, checking and balancing things. And this one checks off those 3 boxes out of the gates. So I think, I love it. Well, Savannah, do you want to talk about your Taekwondo or no?
I guess I can try and make it relevant that like imposter syndrome's good because it keeps you, I shouldn't say imposter syndrome's good, but a little imposter syndrome's good because it keeps you humble, because I thought I was slick when I was in Taekwondo when I was a kid. And so we were doing axe kicks and I was like, I can do like the highest axe kick. Like I can do a great one. And so I went in front of the group to do my axe kick, and I like so overdid it that I swept myself off my own feet and just like went back onto my butt in front of like the whole class. I was like 9. So, you know, like you're super sensitive about that kind of thing. And everyone laughed so hard and I was so literally butt hurt. So, you know, a little imposter syndrome is good.
A little humility is great. What'd you say, Taryn?
It's like a cartoon.
That sounds amazing.
Basically was. It was a really high axe kick. It just, you know, my body
Couldn't keep up.
the body's not meant to actually kick that high. So
That's enthusiasm right there.
Yeah, Daryl loves enthusiasm. Kimberly, I guess you can give props to Daryl. I don't really want to inflate his head anymore, but go ahead.
Inflate.
Well, we learned a very valuable lesson in our own company the last few months, and I wanted to pass that to Daryl because I can see this in him, and I've seen it in our visionary a little bit, where like our visionary went on maternity leave. Our team worked really hard to prepare for that. We had like systems in place. We're feeling really good about it. We busted it while they were gone and like really tried to make sure everything. And we were so proud when they came back. We're like, look what we did. And we were so proud. But there was a missing piece. And it wasn't until they went and they come back that we realized like their creative energy is essential and no one else can do that. Like we were rock stars, right, Aaron? Like
Yeah,
we crushed it.
you killed
We
it.
did.
Yeah.
But we did what we do best and we couldn't fill their shoes. Like as hard as we tried, we couldn't fill their shoes. So no matter what like awesomeness and like brain power that you bring to the table, don't ever feel like that someone could like step in and just run the business for you, because first of all, that's lazy and you know better. And secondly, you bring something to the table that no one else can bring. Like no one else is going to be able to fill that. You can sell your company and it's going to be way different. Like it's never going to be the same as it is right now because of you, Sensei Daryl.
I appreciate that. It's
And I
funny
will
though,
say-
because I go through and I think about like, and I'm not sure if it's imposter syndrome, but it like goes to what Savannah's been saying, you know, like most people that I know will come and say, oh my goodness, you're so good. Like I just got a referral to someone that I went and did my Facebook stalking and I was like, wait a minute. And it turns out to be the contractor that did the second story on our house. His family looked me up a completely different way. And they're like, all we keep hearing about is how wonderful you are, because I got the message from his wife and everything else. And the first thing that my counterparts were saying were, oh my God, dude, that's like so great. You're like amazing. And my thought is, okay, I got to work harder because I got to make it believable that I'm actually doing what they think I'm doing. You know, like that, you're like, I don't feel like I'm up there. I feel like I got some work to do to get to where they're talking about or close to where they're talking about.
Yep.
And they put you on such a high pedestal that you're just like, for me, I know at least I have to work harder because I have to be worthy of that type of praise, if that makes sense.
Well, and plus I knock you down too. Like as far as like when we meet, I cut you back down. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like there's a balance out. You know, I sweep the leg, just like like Kimberly said there. Okay, Daryl, that's enough. Like I sweep the leg, so it's not a big deal.
I can't hear anything. What did you say, Taryn?
Gold.
All right, let's I'm going to take this the direction of obviously all of us collectively add brilliance. And I will say, Taryn and I've been in businesses like what Daryl's talking about, where the owner or the visionary tries to exit and leave people in place. But if they're not a strong visionary that they're leaving in place, operations really does get boring and stale and nothing new. And there's only so much you can recycle. And I just think that there is that complementary need for, the visionary runs like a hurricane. And sometimes that can be super annoying for operations-based people. But without the hurricane, a lot of times they're not generating sales, you know, and then like what pays our bread and butter, like goes, like also the sales start dropping. So I think that there is that balance. So we're going to talk about a couple examples of experts we brought in as the Collab team to different businesses to help complement, and even seats we've held. I know the first one that that I'm going to talk about this morning is around finance. And for a lot of companies where my role is, I'll come in as a fractional COO where I'll run operations for a season until we backfill it with somebody there, because you really need an internal operations person. Like I can't hold, I hold too many companies to try and hold everything down for a long term, but I can hold it for a space. But then as I begin to exit that COO position, a lot of times what I'll pivot into is finance. And so I'll become director of finance, or I'll begin to own a finance position, because usually that's the second most boring thing that the visionary doesn't want to own. First, it was operations, but then when he's got somebody in there, it's the finance seat. And he's like, oh, my books are awful. I wish people stop asking me. And so I'll push into that slot of helping with finance. But it's not like I'm a CPA, and it's not like I have some formalized finance training. I've just been in enough books to know the right questions to ask. And then you always are going to be working with an expert on the finance side of things anyway, whether that's CPA that's doing your taxes or a bookkeeper that's helping you with payroll. But a lot of times, because you're paying those experts to do those things, unless you ask them the right kinds of questions, they're just going to do what is best for them. There's our Amelia becoming just more and more of a little girl every day. They're only going to do what you ask of them, right? So for CPAs, they're going to do your books the best way for them to do taxes, because really that's what they're going to be on the hook for, right? Your bookkeeper is going to do your books the best way for them to do your payroll, or whatever it is you're expecting, but reconciling certain accounts. But they're not going to go any further than that, because they're looking to you to give them some direction. So that's usually my role, as I step into that director of finance role, and I begin to really direct the experts on what we need from them. And if they can't do it, I'll bring in another seat, another expert that can come in and sharpshoot certain spots. And one of the people that I bring in pretty consistently, his name is Josh. Will come in and help people with their chart of accounts. So anybody that's been working on finance knows you have a chart of accounts. That's how you're reconciling your books every month. You've got your income, and they come in through the different streams. You have your cost of goods, which is whatever it took to make these dollars, hard costs. And then you have all your expenses, right? What you're taking your money and applying it towards to pay your rent, to pay your payroll, to keep the utilities on. A lot of things can be stacked in your expenses, but that's how your profit and loss works: is income, then your cost of goods, and then they call it below the fold is all your expenses. And then that's where really you can drill down a lot of times, is your expenses and how you're spending. But a lot of times what people don't do is ask themselves, okay, so this product line that is bringing in so much money, that's called a mastermind, because that's something a lot of our people do, like high ticket mastermind. But then we're not tying expenses directly back to that mastermind to ask ourselves, yeah, but how profitable is that exactly? And I'll give an example. So one of our clients used to do in-person trainings. And they were training sessions on an expertise within the scope that they would train people on. But as we started really analyzing the chart of accounts and asking ourselves, okay, so this workshop, yeah, you make a lot of money out of it, gross, right, above the fold. But how much, when expenses are applied directly at that, are we making on the backside of it? And so we were bringing in photographers and videographers and trainers of different sorts. And then because it was starting to get bigger and bigger, we would need multiples of those people. And when we actually really tried assessing how profitable is that, yeah, it's bringing in all this money, but in the end, it turned out to be one of the least profitable things that this entrepreneur did, even though he felt like he was doing so good. We're selling so many of these, and look how much money we're making out of them, but look how much money you're spending to do those. How could we bring in more money, maybe by a cheaper product line that has less expenses that are associated with it, and that actually increases your profitability? Because yeah, it wasn't a 25K, but maybe it was a 5K, but you didn't put as many other people in the room that way. And so your profitability margin, actually, you're going to make more money on those 5Ks if you sell more of those 5Ks than if you sell more of those 25Ks, because of how much money you're spending towards it. And so bringing in an expert like Josh, he can come in and ask those critical questions of, does your chart of accounts reflect how profitable the different line items of your product line are? Because sometimes I think we go with our gut, and gut is great, and a lot of visionaries live by their gut. But you can't solely live by your gut. You need metrics, right? You need numbers. You need something that's going to give you a very clear expectation of what to expect. If I sell this many of these units, how profitable am I going to be on the back side? Because otherwise, you could be putting all that energy, right? Visionary energy into selling a more profitable line item that maybe doesn't feel as sexy because it's not a 25K price point, but it actually is more profitable for you in the end and will rob you of less of your energy, right? Because that's the other thing we really got to protect the visionary from is losing energy. And a lot of times they'll go and they'll put out so much energy for this high ticket product because they feel like the people deserve it and they expect it and they just gave you all that money. So you better show up at a higher level. But meanwhile, you're draining all of the energy out of the room for the visionary. And then he ends up hating his business, hating his life, like coming out angry at his team. When really, what's the reason for that? The reason is because we're burning too much visionary energy at a product line that isn't profitable enough. So I think that really asking ourselves, is this going to work? So I'm going to show you an example real quick because I like taking people on tours. So this is actually not what I want to show you first out of the gates, but I'm going to show you this one out of the gates. So this one here is an example of some follow-up questions that came from Josh. So this is Josh working us through something that he sharpshoots, So he said, hey, Aaron, here are the questions for your meeting tomorrow. If you have a chance to go over them, can you send me your done for you services? Our call last week, we went over a site or a she's, what he remembers. Where are your order forms created? What's their specific fulfillment tracking, specifically those with direct fulfillment? This is an example of how much is it costing you to do that product line. For example, if a customer searches a coaching session with their product, we would want to know when those happen and how many of those are left to fulfill upon. What's the $97 mastermind annual renewal? What is the $499 annual renewal? Would those be customers renewing for a second year in the same product? What would product upgrades be for? Is there anybody responding to disputes? I noticed all the disputes in Stripe look like were lost due to no response. We'll be going through these expenses next week. A helpful start would be going through the Ask Client account that the CPA has created to put transactions that they need clarity on. If he has a chance to go through the attached sheet provided with a description of transactions of which he's aware of, that would be great. So essentially, this is Josh coming back to me and saying, if you can get me these answers, I'm going to get you a better product. We brought in Josh as the specialist, as the expert, things I don't know how to do necessarily. He's going to ask the right questions, but then Josh needs somebody on our team that's going to go to bat for him, that's going to go get these answers. If you send these answers to a visionary, if they respond to your email, they'll respond back with something cryptic, maybe answer 2 or 3 of those questions, feel good that they at least gave you 2 or 3 answers, and then the thing will float in the ether until the next time you nail them down and ask them again, right? So the reason why he's asking me is, hey, next time you meet with visionary, will you really pin him down on these questions? And even if you can only bat down 3 or 4 of them, that'll prep us for our next meeting together where we meet with visionary and I can get them the remaining 3. I think we really see this last one here happen a lot where the CPA doesn't know how to reconcile something, so they just put ask the client in on when they're reconciling. They don't associate it back to any specific product line. They just say, hey, I don't know what that is. I'm going to put it in there because I can reconcile it out if I put ask the client in there. And then it just floats for months and months and months, sometimes years, never associating that expense back to a product line. And Josh, as the expert, is going to come in and say that can't stay that way. Maybe for taxes, maybe the CPA can reconcile things that way, but yeah, that's not going to be able to fly. So you're right, Savannah, and the visionary gets annoyed with something that's asking them specific. So I think that the beauty is you probably have earned that place of trust with your visionary. If you're doing some sort of meeting weekly or bi-weekly with them, you can get answers out of them faster than a third party. Sit them down, nail them down. And Kimberly and I talked about this with meeting with Steven. When I meet with Steven, is like grab bite-sized pieces. You're probably not going to get all of it out of the first meeting, but that doesn't mean you give up. Get the bite-sized pieces you got this meeting. Next meeting, get these bite-sized pieces. Next meeting, get these bite-sized pieces. And by the end of this month, you're going to have a full project done rather than something that just lives in the ether. We paid this specialist. A lot of times it's a retainer. The guy's just collecting money out of us and we're not moving the project forward because nobody's putting attention at it. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts around finance or this side of things before I show you my next example?
Finance, you usually find is probably the messiest, most embarrassing part, huh?
The finance is the one nobody wants to tell you. It's like everybody gets sheepish, man. Every visionary I pin down and say, hey, we should probably be looking at your chart of accounts and making sure it's as profitable as you think they are. They all start squirming. And then when they start handing you stuff, it's like they're handing you a dead cat. They're just like, oh, I'm really embarrassed that this is what I'm bringing to you. Like nobody's kept up on it, right? And just realizing that's everybody that I've ever met with, no matter how like high level it is, like no matter people you think they're making so much money, how could it be this messy? Taryn and I met with a prospective client this last week, and we thought we got off the call and we had a follow-up call. We're like, holy hell, how are they making so much money? And that's how they're organizing it. It was so crazy, but I think just coming to that humble place of realizing like it's good that you've diagnosed there's a problem. Let's go get some answers. And then you as the operations person chases that down. Yeah.
But sometimes they are more willing to show you than an internal team member though, because you're coming in as an expert or the expert's coming in. They might be embarrassed to show you, but it's like, well, at least this isn't my, my so-and-so employee asking about it.
Yes. And that's probably a good point too, Taryn. Like, I think that's a good spot where a collab team can really work alongside of COOs or like people that are running ops for them. Is sometimes I always tell people, it's not hard for me to win over the visionary. The visionary is actually really easy for me to win over because we are so different, diabolically different. They're like, oh my gosh, you can do that. Please come and do that. That's not the hard one to win over. Usually it's the number two. The number two is the hard one for me to win over because they feel territorial. They feel like they should have already been handling that thing that the visionary is really excited that I'm coming in to do. It like runs against the grain of their imposter syndrome, right? Of feeling like, I knew I should have known this. I can't believe, man, don't they understand how hard I'm working? And then it becomes almost like they start making excuses for why they're not doing this instead of realizing, I'm not here to take your job. I don't want your job. Like, let me come in and just make you look like the badass that you are. Let me help come in and compliment, clip in, help move this rock forward for you, and then exit. Collab's job isn't to be on deck at all times. It's to be a resident expert for you to reach out when you need them. So I think that's a really good point, Taryn, this is a spot that a lot of times CEOs neglect for a lot longer than they should because they don't know who to bring in to help them move it forward, because they don't necessarily always want to go to an internal team and have that internal team member see how messy the business is that they're working for. So I think that's a really good point. All righty, let me give you another example. Another thing that we help people with is sales teams. Dum, bum, bum. That's this one. So this is just an example of how we help people with sales, but a lot of times people haven't built out a formalized sales team yet. So we'll hire an expert in. Usually I'll refer somebody that I know is ethical, right? Because a lot of salespeople are so freaking slimy. Like, you just don't want to bring used car salesmen into your business, right? So I'll bring in teams that I know are ethical, that are full of integrity, and are going to sell from that place. But even then, that team is going to need something from us. And so we'll come in and help them provide the data needed. Sorry, gardeners are out front. Not in my house. I don't pay gardeners. I want to be clear. That's the neighbor's house. So, but anyway, I wanted Taryn to still respect me because Taryn is such a green thumb. And if I didn't say that right there, I would have lost all respect out of the room. We'll come in and we'll help the teams they need. So we hire in an expert, but they're going to need this data from us, right? Taryn created these beautiful sheets where, this is each one of the salespeople. They're going to need to know who bought and who didn't buy. And Taryn's created these sheets where each one of these sales links that are behind it, these sheet links, go to a sales page where that's all of the people who haven't bought, but the sheet actually turns a color when they do buy, automatically triggered from Zap. And it shows people, hey, don't put any more energy at them. They've already been converted. And it gives them the tools they need to go out and start making the phone calls, sending the text, scheduling the calls. Taryn sets up the scheduler to start feeding leads to the salespeople. So those are the resident experts that we've contracted and brought in, but they can't do it without a Taryn seated on the team. They can't do that with somebody that's not able to pull the data, give them the data in a way. We've learned that, like, make it stupid simple for the salespeople, not because they're stupid, but because you want them to do one very specific thing: sell. Like, don't give them opportunity to go get lost in the details. Don't give them opportunity to go get nerding out trying to set up integrations to get their schedule to work right. Take all of that off the field. You just want them on the phone or on the Zoom selling. So I think that this is an opportunity where I'm not a sales expert. I couldn't get out there and sell. I couldn't teach you how to go sell. I couldn't teach you how to convert. You don't want me to do that, but I'm telling you this, like, working alongside sales experts, I've realized they need me as the operations experts to give them the data they need to be the experts. And Taryn built out this whole sheet because we went through a couple reps of a couple different, repetitions of a couple different sales teams and realized, oh, this is how to make this better. This is how this goes better. Until we finally, this last conference, I felt like we nailed it better than ever, where it's like, no, we had everything in advance, everything dialed in. Starting the next day after the conference, everybody had exactly what they needed, and they just started punching, and they did really well. They converted an awesome rate. Which was awesome. Taryn, do you have things you want to say to that, or other questions around sales?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good, showing again of just us helping guide a different expert into the space, because then even we know where we're limited,
Yeah.
and areas where we don't want to necessarily put ourselves in. We're not salespeople. We're not going to make calls, but we'll set it up in a way so that the salespeople you do end up working with work within a silo we create that works with your programs, your applications, and your processes that you agree with.
Yeah, it's good. And I think that who are they going to go to? Like, is the sales team going to go really back to the visionary to get these kind of answers? Nope. Once the visionary is giving you the buy-in, and then once he's able or she's able to get on and bark some orders at whoever it is that's selling the stuff, that's all you're probably going to get out of the visionary, except for the perpetual question of how are they doing, right? Like that's going to be the biggest answer. So for us, we'll create the FAQ sheets. We'll create the one page that the salesperson can come back to. We'll create all the stuff just to keep it stupid simple for your salesperson, just to get out there and slay without having to go like ask a bunch of questions, and then creating a channel where they can ask direct questions, right? So we do it in WhatsApp, so that way we can do it across nation lines, and people can do it from their phones. That's salespeople love their phone, so it's just a quick spot. They can drop in a question. Hey, what about this? Answer, add it to the FAQ. Hey, what about this? Answer, add it to the FAQ. That way we're giving them the resource right when they need it in the WhatsApp channel, and adding to an FAQ so they have it later on down the stream so they can review it, that we can refer people back to. Hey, that's on the FAQ. Make sure you're looking at the FAQ. Hey, that's on the one sheet. Make sure you're looking at the one sheet. So any other questions around sales or comments people want to add?
I would just say another thing adding to the whole like imposter syndrome thing is that sales is like such a specific skill set that people have, and people can like build it, but it's kind of one of those things that's like people are gifted with sales skills or they aren't. Like you can learn certain things, but it's just like it's a very specific niche of skills.
Yeah.
So like that's something that I have beat myself up on, that like sales is not my strong suit at all. Like I get so uncomfortable and I don't do a good job. And it's another one of those things that like you should feel no shame about finding an awesome like set of salespeople to help you with selling your stuff. It doesn't mean that your product isn't good or that your company isn't good if you're not great at sales, because sometimes you do need just that person who's just good at speaking honestly and truthfully about your product in a way that resonates with somebody from a psychological standpoint.
100%. I love that, Savannah. Really good. Another space that we help out is affiliate management. So what we do from affiliate management, though, is we help the back end of affiliate management, where we're pulling all the data, right? Well, maybe there's an affiliate manager that's contracted with, that's going to go out and find other affiliates for you to work with. And then because they're an affiliate manager, they're going to want a percentage of the cut, right? So they're going to go out and find the people you can affiliate with, get them on board, get them the swipe copy for them to be able to put out the emails, get them the creatives that they can post to their socials. They're the one that's knocking down the work for you and then answering those affiliates' questions. But then we're providing all the data on the backside of how are the affiliates, what are the affiliate links, how are the affiliates performing, what's the open rate, what's the click rate, what's the sell rate, like what are the opt-ins versus the sales, like all of that data. The experts aren't going to be able to do. They're going to need somebody on your team to do it. And so that's usually where we fit in from the operations perspective, and create something like this, where this is a spot where it's a sheet where we're tracking the different months and the different payouts and the different people that money is owed to. And then what the PayPal emails are and what the balances are, and have those things been paid? And do we have a W-9? Because you don't want to pay people that you don't have a W-9, because your accountant at the end of the year is going to yell at you that you just put out $89,000 that you have no way to track back, or send somebody a 1099 at the end of the year. And then just tracking through how were they paid, and then answering questions when people come back. So that and then obviously, as you scroll down to the bottom, this is DGA. They were one of ours. This is the 10% payout. So this guy made 10% out of all of the affiliate sales because they were the ones that brought them in, but they needed us from an operations perspective to be able to give them the data, bring it all back. Who's going to be the one that's responsible from inside the organization to own this? Yeah, we hired out this third party. They're not going to manage this part. You don't, just like the sales guys, you don't want them to manage this part, because otherwise you're paying them a huge retainer to do clerical style work, to do admin style work. We can own the data. You just get out there and knock down the affiliates, and you be the one that answers their question, and you be the one that provides them the swipe copy and the visuals. You do the creative and you make the connections, and let us manage the back end of it, so that that we have good answers, that, yes, they've all been vetted, right? Like, yes, this is what we truly owe this person. And we've checked, has the clawbacks been taken out of that, right? If this person, Brian Dixon, brought in people through these sales that actually turned into refunds, we don't want to pay him a percentage on that sale if we refunded it. So then all that back end work has to be done. Did we verify there were no refunds against that guy's affiliate sales that were made? Is this clean? Have you triple checked it? Do they owe us money? Maybe, some of these clients are, maybe there's some of these people that are affiliates actually owe us for products. And you want to ask yourselves, do we want to take that money they owe us out of money that we're going to be paying them to assure that our monies are being paid? I think helping people work through the operational sides of the affiliate tracking is super important. Taryn, I know you do a lot of this kind of work. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's just, these are things people on their team could have done, but when they're in this launch mode, everybody's already got 50 tasks. They're a bit maxed out. So they wanted to give us, break off a chunk for us, be like, okay, we know if we give you this, you're responsible for it.
Yeah.
We don't have to ask about like all these sales vettings. Are these amounts correct? I mean, obviously they're going to look through, they're going to double check before they pay somebody $89,000.
Yeah.
But they broke off a big chunk and said, all right, you're in charge of this part of it. And then they broke off a big chunk and was like, okay, you guys are in charge of the affiliate management.
Yeah.
So it's just nice when there's that line of their team's doing this, they can't do this big chunk, but it's easy to break off. It's easy to have a line and we take over.
It's good.